Darla and I have had the privilege of touring and leading tours in the Holy Land. It was just a wonderful experiences for us, and just to be able to walk on the same roads where those Bible characters walked, and we'd go to a place and the tour guide would begin to lead us through a story that maybe Jesus had told right there at that spot. It was just re-envisioning the Bible, and they were wonderful experiences for us. The Jewish people, love the Jewish people there in Israel. Their culture is still alive. They still speak Hebrew. They hold tightly to their language and their culture as they should. And I love it when I would walk down these really narrow cobblestone streets where they might have shop after shop, and each shop I could probably touch both walls with my fingertips. And I'd walk in, and a sweet old man or woman would welcome me when I entered their shop with shalom. Now, to the Hebrew, it's so much more than just saying, hey, y'all. Now, that's pretty big for some of us, right? But it wasn't just a hello for them. It wasn't just a come in. It was so much greater for someone who understood the Hebrew language and culture. Shalom for them meant, may everything that makes you complete be in health and harmony. Isn't that great? Shalom. May everything that makes you complete be healthy and in harmony. So this Hebrew concept of peace or shalom means something that is so much greater, that you pull everything together and all of it works together to bring health and balance and harmony. We are not just physical bodies, right? We are spiritual, we're emotional, we think, we feel, we have history, we have a future, we have relationships. We're not just individuals, we're connected, right? So when the Hebrew says shalom to you, he means may your entire being, physical, emotional, spiritual, familial, may all of those be in complete harmony and health. Now, I don't have to tell you that if just one of those sectors, maybe our physical bodies, is ill or is missing, that it affects all others, right? So maybe you can do an example. Maybe you can do an experiment this afternoon. Go home right after you take your Nazarene nap this afternoon. Go in your garage and get a hammer. Dana, do this. Get a hammer and hit your big toe with it, okay? See how that then affects your emotions and your family relationships. I can tell you, all of that, it's all connected, right? The Hebrew concept of shalom understood this, right? Everything is connected. When one part of ourselves, whether it's our emotions or our family relationships or our physical body is ill or affected, it affects everything else. An author by the name of Lori Deschene wrote a very telling description of the drama that was constantly part of her life. See if it sounds like anything that you deal with. She wrote, well into my 20s, all of my friendships with women looked a bit like junior high school. One day we'd be codependent and attached at the hips, sending incessant play-by-play emails throughout the workday like one too many notes in class. The next day, we'd be dragging each other by the hair into heaps of combined emotional issues, complete with nasty suspicions, unfounded accusations, and a dramatic reconciliation that would inevitably be short-lived. Then one day, she says, I realized that there was a reason I always found myself in dramatic relationships. I was attracted to drama like a moth to a flame. Do you know anyone that loves drama? Any of you just tired of drama? I'm so glad the political season was over. got over 6 months ago, and I'm really tired of the non-election season now. I'm ready for it to be over too. It's just one season after the other. And when it comes to personal turmoil, we often think about it as drama, right? We live in a world that is constantly, there's little venues of drama going on all of the time. Max Lucado is one of my favorite pastors and authors. He wrote a book called Anxious for Nothing. He said, we live in the most anxious generation since anxiety was measured in the United States, which makes us the most anxious country on the planet. He said the average high school student today has the same level of anxiety as the average psychiatric patient back in the 1950s. And now we know why there's so much angst and challenge and drama all the time going on, not just in our high schools, but everywhere. And I think I can safely say that personal and political or cultural drama is not new in our day. Turmoil has spanned the ages. We find it from the very beginning of time until today. And I know this because God introduced one of his names when they were in extreme drama, the Hebrew people, when they were in extreme drama. He chooses to introduce his name during one of their most challenging seasons. And he said, hey, my name is Jehovah Shalom. The Lord is peace. Now, there's plenty of places in the Old Testament that we could go to look at this backdrop of peace. We often would immediately go to Psalms chapter 23, but that's not where we're going to. Now, next Sunday, if you come, I might be getting to Psalms chapter 23, okay? But there is only one place in all of the Old Testament that God introduces himself with that name, Jehovah Shalom. It's only one place, and I'd like to take you to that passage. If you'll turn to Judges chapter 6, you might recognize the story. I'm going to be hop, skip, and jumping through Judges, so we're not going to stand and read one portion. It's in the context of drama that God tells his people what one of his names was. Let me introduce the book of Judges to us just a little bit. It helps us to understand the context of why he decides to introduce himself that way to them. In Judges, we find that God had given the Israelites everything that they needed to become a great godly nation. The story of Gideon begins at a time when Israel had been living in the promised land now for about 300 years. I've explained that throughout the entire Bible, God is telling the story of how he is desiring to bring people back into fellowship with him, right? So by the time of Judges, by the time the Israelites, remember they escaped Egypt, they wandered for 40 years, they finally came to Jericho, they won that battle, they went into this promised land that God had dedicated and saved for them. Now they have lived there for 300 years. So by the time that they have been here for 300 years, God had given them a set of laws that would guide them about how to be a holy community. He had given them a place to worship. At that time, it was the tabernacle. He had shown them how to atone for their sins. It was through a sacrificial system of a lamb that would be killed. He gave them tremendous victories over their enemies, and he had given them a land that he had promised for all of their ancestors. But that wasn't enough for the Israelites. Unfortunately, they had become addicted to worshiping other gods. It was a blatant violation of the very first guidelines that God had given them. And the scripture says in Judges 2:12, they followed and worshiped various gods of the people around them. Remember, the enemies still lived around them. They provoked the Lord to anger. The Israelites provoked the Lord to anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. There is an unfortunate and sad statement found in 2:10. Now, if you have your Bibles open, and if you really want to remember this context of Judges, you really need to underline Judges 2:10. Judges 2:10 is a key statement for you to understand the entire book. This is what the scripture says. After that whole generation had become gathered up to their fathers, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Now remember, the new generation had not experienced the escape from slavery. They had not experienced the Jordan River stopping. They had not experienced the walls of this fortress called Jericho falling. All they heard was their great-great-grandparents telling these stories, right? Here's something else that we really need to understand about the book of Judges. The Israelites' sin brought brokenness, loss, and division to God's people. God severely punished them because of this idolatry. They were broken people. They had been following idols. They had been following other rulers who oppressed them. There were battle losses, and the once victorious Israelites were now up in the mountains hiding in caves. These were God's people in their own promised land, and now they were hiding in the mountains because they were serving other gods. And it's no wonder why the key description of this period of the Israelites is found in Judges 17:6, another passage that you really need to underline, 17:6. And it says this: every man did what was right in his own eyes. I want you to put that in the context of where you and I live today. When somebody can say, I've decided that I want to become I'll become a male today. I was born a female, but I'm going to be male today. I've decided I want to become a zebra. And so everybody has to then describe you as a zebra. You think that I'm joking. This is not a joke. It's the same context that the Israelites found themselves in Judges. They were deciding what they wanted to do. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Basically, anything goes. No laws, right? So eventually, the Israelites reached a point of utter desperation, and they called upon God to rescue them. So God responds now to their brokenness, and he provides judges to bring them back into relationship with him, okay? So don't think, when I say a judge, don't think of an old man with a white beard and a black robe sitting behind a large wooden desk. It wasn't the culture of the Israelites and the Hebrews. A judge during this time period in the Old Testament was a warrior or a great national leader. That was a judge. They were both male and female. So God's judges were warriors who wore helmets and carried very sharp swords. So the book of Judges tells of a 350-year time period in Israel's history, and it's the story of seven cycles. It was hard for me to get 7 up. I only had 1 cup of coffee today, so 7 cycles. 7 cycles, and that happened. There were 5 things that happened in each one of those cycles, okay? And it's important, when you read Judges, you'll begin to see this cycle over and over and over. So here are the 5 things that happened 7 different times. The first thing that would happen would be rebellion would happen. The Israelites would rebel, and then oppression would take place. The enemies would come and oppress them, and then they would say, "Oh, God, we're sorry." They would repent, and then God would say, "Okay, I'm going to help you," and he would bring a judge, men and women like Deborah and Samson. They were all judges. And then the 5th thing was peace would settle on God's people. And each one of these cycles, there is a statement. You'll find it in 6:1, and it says, "Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord." The cycle would start over. That was when they would rebel. Okay, so that happened 7 different times. So, of the 350 years, I promise I'm going to get to the Lord is peace here in a little bit, but I think it's really important to understand this big context of Judges. Of the 350 years that make up this period in Israel's history, they spent 111 of those years in oppression. A third of this time period was negative drama. Remember, these were God's people. These were the people that were victorious over the Egyptians. They watched the Red Sea divide. They watched themselves, 1.5 million, walk through dry land, and immediately the water closed over the tens of thousands of soldiers that chased them. They were God's special people. They literally had it all, but it wasn't enough for them, was it? And notice that it was in the middle of their promised land that they had to deal with their drama. It was in the middle of where God had given them this wonderful place that they had to deal with this drama. God had told them that he was sending them to a promised land where they could expect to have victory over their enemies, yet as it turned out, due to their disobedience, not that God couldn't provide what he promised, but due to their disobedience, enemies they were supposed to have defeated. Remember, God told them to defeat those enemies when they came in, and they didn't. Because they disobeyed, they actually found themselves in a defeated situation. The enemies were constantly kicking them in their behind, forcing them to hide in the mountains. The tables had turned because they had rebelled against God by doing evil in his sight. And as a result of their disobedience, God allowed their enemies to triumph over them. You see, the biggest misconception about our promised land, our personal promised land as believers, is that we will never have challenges. That's totally false. Any of you ever dealt with drama in your life? Put 2 hands up and a leg if you feel like you're just constant drama, right? Can I give you some observations about drama in the life of a believer? Here they are. Whether you want to hear it or not, I'm going to give it to you. Number 1, sometimes drama is forced on you by the sin of others. One of the first real losses of my young life at age 10 in 1977 was when my favorite godly uncle was killed by a drunk driver one afternoon. It wasn't Uncle Leo's fault. He was just going home from work, teaching FFA at Callaway County High School. The drunk driver killed my favorite uncle. It was drama that was brought into my life and his kids' life and Aunt Geneva. It was because of the sin of somebody else that they had to deal with drama. The affair of a husband will affect the wife and the children and the grandchildren and family friends and the profitability of businesses, and it will affect all of the employees. It was the sin of one person affects everyone else. They have to deal with the drama of this one person. We've all dealt with it. Often we have to deal with the dirty mess that others come and leave on our doorstep. Number 2. Sometimes God allows drama in your life to test you. Who we really are comes out under pressure, right? Both of our sons are in the military. They've both gone through special training to deal with very emotionally and physical heavy stress in their lives. And so they are trained ahead of time. They are sent out into the middle of the woods. They're given just a very little nutrients, hardly any sleep. They have to run 8 miles. They have to ruck 12 miles. A ruck is basically a hike with a huge pack with all of your equipment, hiking through the darkness, given some coordinates that they've got to find in the middle of the darkness. They can't talk to anybody. They haven't slept for 2 days, and they've eaten maybe an apple and a breakfast bar for a day, and then their leaders come and says, okay, now sit down, and we want you to write 3 pages of documents on a certain concept, because they want to see how their mind works after dealing with all of that pressure. Forced trial helps those leaders see what that soldier is made out of. Can he or she deal with pressure? Can they think under pressure? I told you what the definition of a trial was a couple weeks ago. I'm going to give it to you again. A trial is adverse circumstances that God introduces or allows in order to identify where we are spiritually and to prepare us for where He wants us to go. There are times that others, through their sinful actions, introduces drama into our lives. There's sometimes that God introduces drama to teach us, to strengthen us, to help us to learn something. Number 3, you will have drama even when you are in the center of God's will. Can we just quickly think of Bible characters who dealt with trials even when they were doing what God told them to do? Think of Moses, was chased by thousands of soldiers. God told him to lead the Israelites out, right? And because he was obeying God, now he had tens of thousands of soldiers chasing him through the desert, right? Think of Joshua. He had to deal with the grumbling of his own people, even though Joshua was doing exactly what God told him to do in leading the people. Peter was thrown into prison after he had preached the gospel. Paul was beaten, shipwrecked, imprisoned, and brought before the Sanhedrin many times because he was obeying God. So even those of us who are in the middle of God's will, saluting every time God tells us to do something, even then there are times that God allows drama in our lives. Unfortunately, the Israelites responded to the drama by taking their eyes off of God, and they began to trust themselves to bring relief. They began to appoint judges, which did not work. Year after year, they faced defeat. The Midianites held them as hostages for many, many years. It became so bad that they had to run and hide in the mountains for protection. The Midianites did everything possible to bring pain and destruction on the Israelites. This is what 4 and 5 says. They, the Midianites, camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza and did not spare a living thing for Israel. Neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count the men and their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. So what the Midianites would do is they would wait until the day before the harvest, and then they would set the field on fire. Can you imagine as a farmer watching that happen? They would wait until all of the grain was cut, and the farmers had loaded it all onto the wagons, and then they would come over the hill and they would steal the wagon with all of the fresh cut wheat. And if you're a farmer, you can just imagine the pain of your entire year's toil and investment all being destroyed in 1 hour. To God's people now, in this story, in the story of Gideon, they were broken, and they were hungry, and they were scared, and they were certainly in search of peace. Now recognize that it was God who allowed drama into their lives. The Midianites didn't overpower them with their own. God allowed them to provide drama into the lives of the Israelites. It was because of Israel's rebellious actions God allowed this. He let them hit rock bottom. He let them live in turmoil. Have you noticed that God will allow us to hit rock bottom when we have walked away from Him and when we're still trying to fill this void with something else? Thankfully, as a result, the Israelites remembered God. The scripture says in verse 6, so Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the sons of Israel cried to the Lord. Darla and I have had the privilege of traveling all over the world and eating some, let's just say, questionable food. As missionaries, my goal was to always try something at least once. Often the culture was that if you did not eat what was put in front of you, you were not considered a good guest. And so I didn't want anything to hinder my ministry, so I would eat it. I remember a missionary friend of ours in China took us to a Nepalese, a restaurant that focused on Nepal. We were very close to Nepal. Actually, we were in northern India. And he took us to a restaurant so that we could get to know the culture of the Nepalese people that were just 70 miles north of us. And we sat down and he said, would you all like some yak butter tea? Now, I didn't know what yak butter tea was, but, I drink tea once a year or so. And I thought, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, we want to experience Nepal. And so he ordered some yak butter tea for us. Now, let me explain to you what yak butter tea tastes like. I want you to put some warm water in a cup, not hot, warm, and then go out and cut some hay and just put that in your warm water. And then go find some rancid butter. Then put it in that hay water. But we're not done, Marcy. We're not done. Now go out into the field in the middle of summer and find a yak. You know what a yak is? It's a really ugly cow, okay? Very hairy. go out and find a yak in the middle of July when it's nice and warm and just lick the sweat off of his neck. That's what yak butter tea tastes like. That really, I mean, he had the gall of saying, would you like a second cup? And we said, no, thank you. It was the nastiest, I am not kidding, it tasted like rancid butter yak sweat is what it tasted like. So there have been some places where, you know, whenever we sit down at a meal, our family always stops and thanks the Lord for our food. Now, often that is just something that we do traditionally. We have been in some places where you don't just say, thank you, Lord, for this food. We say, Jesus, keep me alive because I'm going to try to eat this food, okay? We have to stab the food before it, crawls off of the plate, and that way we can eat it, right? But we've had to pray, Lord Jesus, help us to be able to drink this without getting sick, right? That's where we've been. We had to call upon Jesus truly to bless and purify this food. Have you noticed that when people are in great drama and turmoil, they finally call out to Jesus, and they finally mean it? It's not just rote memory. It's not just a tradition. It's, oh, Jesus, if I need you, it's now. The prayer is no longer just ritual. The Bible finally comes to life, and it's more than just cute stories that we read to our kids. It's life-changing. And church worship becomes more than just a scheduled event. That's where Gideon and the Israelites were at this moment. And in this context, God reminds the Israelites that they tried to handle the drama with their own idols. In verses 6 and 7, we see God telling the Israelites that He was the one who brought them out of Egypt. He was the one who freed them from slavery. He was the one who brought them into this beautiful promised land, yet they did not obey. They did not follow God. And God reminds His people that He was the one who saved them and delivered them and released them and sustained them and protected them, yet they turned away from this loving God and they tried to meet their own needs by adopting these foreign gods. Now, in the Old Testament, this is called idolatry. Now, they didn't give up God totally, I can tell you that. They just made God just one of their answers. He was just one of the many things that they depended on for peace. And don't we do the same thing sometimes? Too many of us worship the one true God on Sunday, but on Monday we worship something else. It could be we worship money, or we worship prestige or fame or comforts or sports or whatever it is. Can I tell you the definition of an idol? An idol is anything that comes before God, simply put. Anything that comes before God. Tony Evans, the preacher, said, an idol is that thing you ultimately count on for your provision, for your direction, and for your satisfaction. And I've watched people get angry at me at church because I simply preached what the Bible said about money, about tithing, about giving God our first fruits, and they get mad at me because money has become an idol to them. And sometimes an idol is something that looks good. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's sports. Maybe it's a spouse. Remember, an idol is anything that comes before God. An idol is anything that we depend on it for satisfaction before we depend on God. It's here in this context of gloom and pressure and pain and loss and drama for Gideon, that God introduces his new name to the Israelites. That's why it was important for me to give this historical context. It's in that context that God says, my friends, in the middle of your drama, my name is Jehovah Shalom. The Lord is peace. Now, that wasn't a new concept for Jewish people. They understood what shalom meant. The biblical understanding of shalom, like I said before, meant wholeness and security and salvation. When a Hebrew would greet each other with shalom, it was actually not just a greeting, but it was to say goodbye as well. They bookended your experience with them with this peace. When they would say shalom to you, it meant to confer all that was healthy and all that was righteous and all that blessed their friend altogether. There was an understanding that when one was living in shalom, there was a balance between a person's mind and a person's heart and a person's soul and a person's family members. Everything was healthy and everything was ordered and everything was secure. And God said, I wish that you would understand me as your shalom. Have you ever heard someone describe a person as, man, that guy, that woman, she sure has deep roots? Or that someone has this deep calmness about him. Maybe this is just my southern roots, but we would say, oh, his well is deep. Do you know what that means, right? There is this, it's that understanding of shalomness. That somebody's roots goes down deep and they understand things that we may not understand because they have worked at understanding God and enjoying this deep fellowship relationship with God. It doesn't matter what is going on the outside. This drama, this wind, this storm that's going on. But inside there is this healthiness, this order. The mind and the heart and the soul, there's a security with it that comes because God, Jehovah Shalom, has put his presence on their life. And so it was. In the middle of Gideon hiding from the Midianites, when the enemies were just over the hill, destroying and burning and killing, it was in that middle, when there was a lack of resources, when everything seemed to be going wrong for Gideon and he was hiding, it was then that God said, Gideon, my name is peace. In the middle of your mess, Gideon, I represent wholeness. Gideon, in the middle of your fear, I am security. Gideon, in the middle of your emptiness, I am your resource. I am unshakable. I am absolute. I am immovable. I am permanent. Can I just verbalize the white elephant in this room? The church, this church family has felt the great pain of loss of pastoral leadership. And now we're wondering who that next leader is going to be. The pandemic has stolen some things from us that we're just not too happy about. It's stolen community, it's stolen hugs, it's stolen fellowship over dinner, it's stolen families, it's stolen the lives of some who have passed. And it's brought real challenges, not just to us, but around the world, obviously, but we feel it right here. Some of our families are not here today because of many things. It could be the pandemic, it could be job change because of the pandemic, many reasons. Our church is not the same as what it was 2 years ago. And I know that there are some of us here today that are burned out. You're exhausted. You're without resources. The volunteer team that you had to help you is not as healthy as it used to be. We don't have the youth and the children's groups like we used to have. There's so many of these seats that you can just name families that are missing here, and you miss them. And we don't know what is around the corner with this pandemic. You know, we began to breathe just a little bit lighter over these last few months, and all of a sudden, in the last couple of weeks, there's some changes. And there will probably be some changes even in the future. I get to hear the stories of what's happening with our missionaries around the world, and I'm shocked at what they are dealing with. It's the same place that Gideon found himself in. He was hiding, fearful for his life, removed from the fellowship that he had with all of his community, trying his best to preserve the harvest that he had worked so hard on, hiding for his life, hearing the enemy over the hill. And God said, Gideon, my name is Jehovah Shalom. I am the God of peace. Now, I confess to you that I don't have great answers for us, this community. I don't have a silver bullet. I don't have tremendous resources. I don't have the wisdom, the provision for what we all need here as a congregation. But I do know the one who does. And he's told us his name. His name is Jehovah Shalom. The only thing that I can offer you as your pastoral leader is to remind us that we, just as Gideon did, we serve that God of peace, that God of resources. His well is deep. He has unlimited calmness. The God who knows, the God who sees, the God who provides, who hears. That is the one who is our provider, our protector, our healer, our redeemer, and the giver of all things. He is the Lamb of God. He is the water of life. Do you believe that this morning? Can you believe that even while we are in the middle of uncertainty and drama? And all I know is that God wants to be part of this transition that we are going through this fall. He wants to be a part of the board as they pray and fast over this next leader. He wants to be a part of that pastor that is somewhere right now, and he or she is beginning to sense God's leadership and wondering if a move is about to take place. He's already identified that person. He wants to be a part of that family as they prepare. He wants to be a part of us as we go through the drama of bringing on a new leader. But even then, he wants to remind us that he is Jehovah Shalom, the God of peace. Would you please stand? Can we go back to the story of Gideon? I want you to notice that Gideon had yet to solve the problem of the enemy. There was still an immediate problem. He was still hiding. Yet, before Gideon dealt with that drama in the physical realm, he made an altar to worship the God of peace. God had not yet dealt with the Midianites. He could still hear their cursing over the hill. And God was talking to Gideon as he was hiding and said, "Psst, Gideon, my name, Jehovah Shalom." And even in that moment, even when Gideon was hiding and he could hear what was going on over the hill, he makes this altar to worship God in the middle of the drama. And in that worship experience, the God of peace brought Gideon clarity, brought him depth of understanding. He brought him an ordered mind and security, and everything was in balance. Nothing had changed on the outside. Nothing. The drama was still going on. But when he began to experience Jehovah Shalom, everything changed on the inside. Gideon had peace and security and order and comfort and health. Can I just encourage you today? Choose to invite the God of peace into your drama, and peace will overcome. So God tells us today, my name is Jehovah Shalom, the Lord of peace.
Please sing this with me. Jehovah Jireh, my provider, you are more than enough for me. Jehovah Rapha, you're my healer. my provider. You are more than enough for me, Jehovah Rapha. You're my healer. By your stripes I have been set free. Jehovah Shalom, you are with me to supply all my needs. You're more than enough, more than enough. You are more than enough for me. Jehovah Jireh, my provider. You are more than enough for me. Jehovah Rapha, you're my healer. By your stripes I have been set free. Jehovah Shammah, you are with me to supply all my needs. You're more than enough, more than enough. You are more than enough, more than enough, more than enough, more than enough. You are more than enough for me.
You might notice that we're singing the same song every Sunday because I want that song to begin playing in your mind because you've memorized it in the hard moments or when you're praying and God begins to remind you of who He is. The song that we've been singing over and over is going to begin to remind you who God is. Receive this benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance on you, and may He give you peace. So now, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, go in peace, for He has already gone before you. You're dismissed.